Far Cry is it's an open world game about a guy called Jason Brody who's trapped on this island, and it's an island full of some really colourful characters. He's a man alone. He's out there trying to find his way through. He's lost his friends. He needs to go and re-find them and get them out there. But basically, he's trying to survive in this really quite intense place. And it's real hard. It's like the other Far Cry games. It's very much a kind of a shooter experience. But then coloured by this whole idea of Jason growing to kind of learn and take control of his surroundings and become a survivor.
Oh shit, they're all over the place.
It's a real challenge designing a game like this. It's a real challenge kind of marshalling and corralling all the different kind of influences that we have. We've obviously got a lot of guys that have come through from Far Cry 2 who are really pleased with the way that where Far Cry 2 got to, but I think also felt like there was more that could be done with it. Then we've got a lot of other influences. We're really lucky to work at a place like Ubi Montreal, where we have all these amazing influences around us. We have Splinter Cell going on here. We've got Rainbow. We've got Assassins. We've also then got a whole host of other people that have come in from other studios as well. So their backgrounds can be much more in the into other kinds of FPSs, other open world games. So that kind of mix, when it all gloms together, can be a bit of a frightening thing, because also the main thing we want to do with the game is we want to make sure we have this game that just doesn't compromise at any point. We don't ever say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that all of the experiences that you can have and that are suggested by a world like Far Cry, that we hit all of them as much as possible. So that does lead to some sort of bashing of heads every now and again, but I think that's kind of natural. And I think also what that eventually gives us is it makes sure that we have this game experience that is all about enabling players. It's all about enabling players to do what they want to do. If they see a setup, it's never like, oh, I wish I could have done that. That would have been really cool if I could have jumped off this cliff or whatever it might be. But we make sure that as much as we possibly can, we let you do that. We let you kind of fulfill those roles that you want to have.
Take off! Okay.
So we want to make sure that you can have this really open gameplay experience where you can go anywhere and do anything. At the same time, we want to make sure that we have this really kind of directed narrative of making sure that you feel the highs and lows of a narrative journey that you might expect from another more linear shooter, but that we don't compromise on that at any point. We make sure that we hit both ends. So you end up with this open world experience that is just about you following your nose. You just kind of take a look off into the world and you just head off and follow it. And then also at the same time, you have this really intense story that's kind of constantly challenging you and constantly kind of playing with your expectations. The storyline as a whole is very much about Jason, who's he's this youngish guy. The idea is that we want to try and make him as normal a guy as possible. We don't want to end up with this kind of super genetically modified super soldier that's going to save the universe or anything like that. We want to make sure that we end up with this story that's very, very much on a human scale, so that you feel the discovery that he has about himself. You feel that as well, and you can kind of feel the elements of it that kind of touch something within you and make it feel kind of familiar. That it doesn't end up being, you don't have these fantastic situations where you've just stopped World War III single-handed, but it's something that's much more personal, it's much more local to you, so that you arrive on this island, it's kind of like you're off traveling, maybe on a gap year, backpacking, something like that. You think that you know the world, or Jason thinks that he knows how the world works. And then he meets a guy like Vaz, and suddenly everything he thought he knew about stuff is just completely out the window. He thought he was doing things that were challenging, life-threatening and that kind of stuff. And then he sees somebody like Vaz and understands, okay, there's a whole nother world out there that he's just got no experience about at all. Making sure then that you go from that kind of naive point, and that's also mirrored in the gameplay too, that you start at this very naive beginning and then gradually understand, okay, I'm starting to understand how the world works, I'm starting to understand how I can make an impact on that world, and then eventually turning it around so that you're the master of that world as well. That's the narrative kind of thread, and it's the same thing with the gameplay as well. The gameplay is very much mirrored by that thread too. So you start off and you see the world and you're like, what the hell is this? I've got no idea. I'm really kind of like, I'm lost at the moment. I'm kind of feeling like, okay, I've got a gun, I've got to get out of there, I've got to shoot people, but I'm no good at shooting and that kind of thing. So it's taking that kind of core beginning of really feeling like the world's out to get you, and then slowly but surely you start to understand, okay, I can use this thing, and I can use the stuff that's around me, I can use these plants, I can use these animals, and eventually you start to turn the tables, and you start to grow as a character as well, and start to become somebody who's in charge of his environment. We wanted to make sure that you know, that you have a voice, that you're also commenting on this. I mean, Jason is effectively, in some way, he's kind of, you want to make sure that you're getting the right reaction. I mean, a lot of FPSs choose not to give the player a voice because it can be a wee bit jarring. We decided that we wanted to do that so that we can make sure that the stuff that you're experiencing is through the filter of Jason.
Shit, gotta go!
That while at one time you are experiencing his story and you're experiencing your story through the character development, but it's basically his story. It's the story of Jason's narrative. It's not your narrative.
Wow. This is new.
I think it's important for him to be able to reflect on the things that are happening so that he can explain a little bit about how he's internalizing the things that are happening in the world around him. So, for example, how he's feeling about a character like Earnhardt, how he's feeling about a character like Vaz, understanding a little bit more about what his emotional state is. There's some pretty intense stuff that's going to go on with him and his friends, and I think it's important that, yes, we have that going on in front of you, but that also that we just give those kind of little cues here and there to let you know.
Is there a radio tower on the ship?
Yeah, and a shitload of Vaz's leeches.
No, we want to make sure that while we can direct the narrative, while we can make sure that you're experiencing the narrative that's going on, and that, yes, it's through Jason's filter, but it's a filter. A lot of the game, you will be directing the action, and you as the character will be dictating what happens, and you will be having an impact on the island around you. It's not just going to be something that's just kind of passive to you, but you will be changing the feel of the environment around you. And that's going to be particularly seen through the open world, is that kind of on a slightly more macro scale, the feel of the island around you as you start progressing through the story, and that you start getting involved with some of the situations with Vaz and the pirates and those kind of guys, that as you move through the game world, it's going to change. The feeling of the world will change. You're going to feel like, okay, so I'm starting to sort of, you know, change what's happening on this island. At the same time, you're going to be changing what's happening on the island. The island's going to be changing what's happening with you, and it's going to be leaving its mark on you. You might have seen in the demo, you've got that kind of tattoo on your arm. There's going to be some stuff going on with that we're going to get into in a little bit more detail moving on forward through the campaign. The narrative that you're following with Jason and with Jason's story is very much about Jason's experience on the island. There are going to be other offshoots from that that will be more about you as a player, whether you decide to engage with them or not. So there'll be much more about the island story, what's going on generally on the island. If this one central kind of narrative thread is about Jason and his kind of fight to survive through the island, there's also other things that you can kind of dip into, which will be narrative rich about the island and about the island that you're on, its history, what the people there are doing, how Jason can influence what their lives are and what's going on with them. We don't want to kind of conform to expectations. We want to make sure that people are really, they are surprised by what we're going to be going, where we're going to be taking the game. This place, the island itself, needs to really feel like a raw place. It needs to really feel like the kind of environment where it feels credible, it feels authentic, it feels like in this place this stuff would happen. So you're going to see, you know, this guy's drugging you. You know, there are drugs out there in the world. You're going to have these kind of hallucinatory experiences. You're going to have some that scale of things as well, that, you know, it's not necessarily always going to be voluntary, and as well it's not necessarily always going to be about you making that choice. It's one of the things that we kind of realized as well is looking like a guy like Earnhardt. He's pretty out there, and he comes over as quite benevolent, but that's not necessarily always going to be the case. One of the things we say about it is it's not necessarily going to be the guy with the gun to your head that you have to worry about. So a guy like Earnhardt comes over as kind of a little bit benevolent, but you're never quite sure. And that's why we want to keep people on their toes.
Everything is excellent, really. And not the yellows. Don't take them. They're liable to kill you.
That's Far Cry 3. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. We're coming out later on this year on PS3, Xbox 360, and PC. Thanks very much.
See anything you fancy?